Morning, Louise. Thanks a lot for being with us today. I really appreciate adding all your expertise and knowledge in the industry. Excited to have you on the platform today. Thanks for joining.
Thank you so much, man. Thank you to everybody who's logged on or logged in today as we go through buying in a sectional title development or a residential community. I'm very excited to be here. Our business is called Estate Living, and we work with residential communities. We work with homeowners and residents, folks that are wanting to invest. We also work with the estate management to manage and drive the best practice within the estate. And then, of course, our property developers. And there we both provide information for the property developers, but we also help property developers market and sell their particular developments.
Louise, indeed, because if you look at now the current status of South Africa just going out of COVID, we still see that there's a huge demand of people that want to buy. Not everybody has been retrenched, not everybody's salaries has been cut. We actually saw in the month of April quite a large number of people going online and looking around for mortgage pre-qualifications. So we also see that there's a sophistication coming into the market where buyers are realizing I've got to do my homework before I start going out to buy a property. We also already see that many estate agents are advocating online viewings and also less interaction with their customers. So it's really a time for everybody to be innovative, to actually start changing the game plan that's been in operation for 30, 40, 50 years. And that's why it's so excited for us to have a collaboration with Estate Living to see that how can we make life easier for the property sales team, how can we make life easier for the home buyer. And for me, very importantly, is working with Estate Living in providing education and information to home buyers. Because I always say that education is power. If you have power in your hands, you can negotiate better rates. You are buying in an estate where you actually have knowledge of what's going on the estate, but it's actually a sound investment. So anything that you want to collaborate, add on that?
Absolutely. That's, education is key. I think it's very, very important to understand the nature of the environment that you're moving into. It's not only education around the actual process of buying and selling a property, but also understanding how residential communities operate and the types of responsibilities and obligations you have, and then of course what your rights are within these communities as well, should you choose to buy, and making that right decision for your family, especially if this is possibly one of the most valuable investments that you'll make in your lifetime.
Exactly. I always say it's the biggest investment, but also the biggest debt that you're going to take up. So make sure that you actually do it very responsibly. So let's look at what we've got on offer today. We've already introduced myself and Louise. We're going to look today at sectional title versus community estates. We're going to look at the hidden cost, buying from a property developer or buying second-hand property, how to use your FLISP subsidy, because I think this is one of the big opportunities you saw in starting to educate the first-time buyer into how to use a government subsidy, how to get yourself ready to buy a property. There are so many property developments coming up now in the affordable market, so we're going to go into that. So then we're also going to look at how to fix your price in 2020 and only pay for that in 2022. One of the questions that are coming up quite a lot is, shall I fix my interest rate right now? And because it's the lowest it's ever been, so but maybe the interest rates can drop. Then we're going to look at some frequently asked questions we had, useful websites, questions, and contact details. So let's start over. Louise, tell us a little bit more about Estate Living and tell us how big is your reach and what do people get when they actually come and visit your platform?
So at the moment, as you can see from our statistics here, we work with homeowner resident, as I mentioned. We have around 400,000 homeowners and residents that are currently living, working, and living and investing in residential communities, and we are growing that audience. We have around 730 communities. And of course that is also growing as more and more stock becomes available within different price ranges. I think that is a very key thing to note, that originally when residential communities first launched into the market, often they were priced at quite a high price because of all the offerings, the lifestyle offerings, etc. But property developers and experience has allowed us to learn by the mistakes of our predecessors, and to now be able to build communities around what people truly want at a price which is coming in at multiple price entry points, and that's very important. We have about 250 property developer groups, so it's a good mix. Most of our communication is online. We've recently launched our app called Connected Living, and Connected Living will really bring information to the community, will enable you to read up and understand and see properties or view developments, and really understand what that development is about. So Estate Living hopes to give you everything you need to know about community living in one space.
Thank you. Louise, sorry, this is not interception. Can you edit here quickly between, because I see I've got the wrong PowerPoint up without your picture here. That big, nice picture of yours.
Hold on, do you want me to pause the recording? Just hold on.
So, Louise, one thing that I actually realized working with properties for many, many years, and this is very a nice spreadsheet that I obtained from Stealthy Wealth through one of my colleagues, is that if you look at property, it's really actually a forced way of savings. Now, a lot of people would say, don't buy a property, live in the property and rent a property from somebody else. And you can rent much cheaper than actually you can buy, because buying has got a lot of hidden expenses owning a property. If you look at this spreadsheet that was prepared by Stealthy Wealth, we look at a property that is purchased for 1.150. Then we look at what will be the market related rental. Then we start looking at the expenses, one can almost call it the hidden expenses of home ownership. You're looking to put some money away for maintenance, rates and taxes, and you've got to pay your bond. Now, this bond was calculated at a interest rate which was 10.45. So interest rates have dropped now quite a lot. But will landlords also adjust their rental? I don't think so, because obviously they get the benefit of the lower interest rate. So what they did with Stealthy Wealth is to start comparing. Now, don't get spooked by all the figures I'm showing here, but what I'm trying to show you, it takes quite a couple of years to actually start breaking through the ceiling. If you take your rental money and you take the extra money that you would have paid on rates, on taxes and maintenance, and put that away in an investment. Now, Louise, have you seen in people renting that they actually put this money away to say, I am saving this for a long-term investment? Or do people actually just rent at the maximum that they can afford and don't commit themselves to that investment and savings? Because this is really the crux for me, is that buying is a forced way of saving, I say. Mm-hmm. And do people put this money away? What is your experience in the market?
I mean, I think that it is very challenging for a lot of folks to not only pay their rent but also then save, plus all their expenses that they have, and the expenses that you have in your daily life are escalating on a daily basis, so I think a very disciplined person could possibly be saving, and I'm sure that is something that we need to all sort of put ourselves, to practice that discipline. But in our experience, often people are renting for a very specific reason. So perhaps they're renting in an area which they can't afford to buy, and they're renting there because of security and access to where they work or where their children go to school. we look at the numbers about the savings, and I know what you're saying, and one does not, in this formula, what we're not in considering is the capital appreciation on the property as well. So not only are you saving and taking ownership, but should you choose to resell that property, there could be an appreciation on the property, and you can then earn additionally from that resale.
Well, this is if you look at the month 250, you see that the property value has grown to 4 million, but your savings has grown to 3.9. But as I know that very few people that are renting actually has the discipline to put that money away. So what we say is that if you buy a property, make 100% sure that you do have a discipline to actually save the money somewhere else, because otherwise you're going to end up 20 years later and you have paid up the bond of your landlord, and he's got to pay the property, and you're still paying rent to your landlord, and by that time your rent has escalated through the roof. If you had a home loan that you forced yourself to pay off, hopefully by that time your home loan is paid off, and then you have a paid up property and you only need to pay for your maintenance and rates and taxes. So now we're going to discuss the sectional title versus freestanding property, and this is where we start first analyzing what are the pros and the cons. And Louise, I'm going to ask you to discuss a little bit on gated community, because that's your speciality. So give us a little bit more insights here.
So residential community living came up definitely from a need for security, and security is still absolutely paramount within any development, no matter what price range you're buying in. I think nowadays if an estate isn't secure, it's not an estate or a housing complex or a sectional title development. Again, it's about location. So where are these communities placed? Are they close to a good location? Are they close to transport? Are they close to where you go to work? Often there's schools on the environment, schools within the estate, or very close to the estate, so that just getting the kids to school becomes a slightly less stressful, and in some cases children can walk to school, just depending on where it is. The development comes with various beautiful facilities and lifestyle aspects. So, you can take a walk with the dogs and the kids around the neighborhood safely. You can run, you can jog, cycle, and all of this is enabled because of the security element. There's often a club where you can go have something to eat. Some estates have golf courses. It really just depends on the facilities. I think there's about 55 golf course estates in the country, and I don't see that being a particular market that will continue to grow. Golfing is not, the sport itself needs a lot of work. So most communities that we're finding are more focused on lifestyle, so running tracks, walking areas, and then obviously access. I think what's very important about buying into a residential community or sectional title is understanding the rules of that particular development and doing your research and due diligence around how that development is managed and the leadership within that development. Often the mismanagement of a development can be fatal to a development, and we see that as often trustees have they're overarching and they have their own personal interests at heart versus the interest of the community. So do your due diligence. Make sure you see and read the rules of the development. Rules are very important. They enable to keep the value of the overall development up, but they focus on the asset value of the development, and obviously on the consumer sentiment, how happy are the homeowners living within that estate. And then obviously, there are costs to living in a sectional title or homeowners association, and it's important to understand that these costs are in addition to your municipal rates and your bond repayment.
Thanks a lot. I always find it very strange that people are put off by levies. because like levies is like a swear word or a 4-letter word for people, and they say, I don't want to pay levies. But then I always advise my owners to go and participate and sit in at the meetings of a body corporate or by home ownership, because they are all owners in there, and you've got a collective voice in those meetings, and you can participate in deciding on the budgets and the levies, because otherwise it can be run by somebody else that maybe want to introduce some expenses that you not agree with, and you are part of that. So what I do find is that people must not be frightened by the concept of levies, because if you go now to a freestanding property, you also have to maintain your property. If you let your property go down, you are going to deteriorate the value of your property. One day when you sell it, you've got to spend a lot of money to replace the roof, or maybe fix up your garden, because you let your garden go to a jungle in the long time, in the interim period. What I do find about your own property is that you do have less restrictions in respect of building plans. But again, you cannot start building extra rooms onto your property or an extra granny flat without going to the municipality. So one must understand all the pros and the cons. Obviously you have a wider selection buying outside a community estate. But what I do find refreshing is that in the past, community estates were very much limited to very expensive properties. And all of a sudden, the more affordable market is opening up, where they say that we are also introducing access to the first-time buyer, and units that are ranging from 400, 500, 600, 1.5 million is all of a sudden coming to a front, where people also have security, the convenience. And all of that for me is a very positive thing. I'm very excited to collaborate with you going forward, because you're going to focus very strong on this type of a market as well. So
absolutely.
Let's have a look at, sorry, yes,
absolutely.
You can add. Yes, so one thing that I've also looked at growth is that obviously in a gated community, you're looking at price growth and you're looking at freestanding. I'm going to first give my jab at freestanding, because obviously if you improve a property, you can decide if you want how much you want to spend. Sometimes you can overcapitalize, but you can actually, if you improve your property with good care and understanding, then you most likely will not overcapitalize too much, unless you go really completely out of a wall. But you can actually go and do internal improvements. You can change your bathrooms, your kitchens and all that stuff, and you can also do external improvements. The question is, at what time do you start to overcapitalize? Because if people start to do a Property 24 or a private property search in your area, all the valuations are nowadays done with a comparative market analysis. So they will actually do a comparison, how much did your property sell for, or previous properties, other properties in your area sell for before actually, and what would be the cap that people will be prepared to pay in your neighborhood for your property. So you most likely seldom find that a property of 1.5 million, you can all of a sudden improve so much that it now can sell for 2.2. Now this is one of the negatives for me in a gated community, because again, if you spend too much, you can actually overcapitalize, and maybe if they do a price comparison, they will not find your property in that price range when they search, and maybe you have overcapitalized. What are the ways to make sure that you don't overcapitalize in a gated community, and can you still improve? What do you improve internally and externally? Can you tell me a little bit more about this?
Sorry, just pause for a second. Sorry, I don't know. Okay. Yes. So we can carry on recording. We might just. My computer glitched, and I'm not sure. Hopefully, it will not have glitched too much.
Okay. Go again.
No, I think I got what you said. No, it's fine. It's fine. It should be fine. I think it kept recording the Zoom meeting. It didn't record the screens that came up. It should be fine. Okay, I'll carry on here. So the growth and overcapitalizing within a residential community. I think what's important to note, and you mentioned it earlier, about the rules and regulation that govern the the look and feel of the community, or what they call the aesthetic guidelines. So generally, when you purchase into a residential community that has a specific look and feel, you're buying into that architectural style as well. And I think that's important to note. So if you don't like the architectural style of a particular development, I suggest you don't buy there, because you won't be able to sort of move outside of that particular architectural style, because the rules and the MOI or constitution of that estate dictates that style. And if you do anything, they will then penalize you and insist that you then change whatever renovation you've done. So make sure you understand that if you're buying into a face brick community and you like face brick, that's great. But if you don't, then don't buy. You can't change it. There isn't much rules. You can do improvements onto the interior of your home. The reason why residential communities in the market are generally priced higher and have a greater capital appreciation is because of the similar things that would bring a property down outside of a residential community. In a residential community, you guarantee the security and the safety of that particular community. And because of the overall asset value of the community as a whole, there is a positive benefit because the property is well maintained and the clubhouse is well maintained. So the improvements that you can make obviously are to the interior of the property. You can do exterior improvements as long as they are within those guidelines. Generally, that's style, color, etc. You are competing with your neighbors, and there is kind of an understanding of the price range that you find within a particular development. And what contributes to that price range is the facilities, management of the development, your house itself, where it's positioned within the development, and then of course the consumer sentiment. What is the perceived value of the brand of that particular estate? Often you see it where an estate is a beautiful environment, it's really wonderful, but they've had a huge amount of problems with their trustees and directors, and properties that were selling at quite high prices are now losing value, and those homeowners, no matter what they do, they just can't seem to get out of that particular price range because of the media almost around that particular development.
So it's almost like when you buy a car, you do a lot of history into the service history of that vehicle. You go and check, you go and do an AA test, you do a roadworthy, and I find so many buyers actually just buy a property and they do it with no investigation. So whenever you buy a property, particularly if we get involved in a rent to buy purchase transaction, we always request the minutes of a meeting of a body corporate or the homeowners association. From there, you can see in the last 2 years, did they got involved in any fights or any disputes at the body corporate, because that determines, are you going to buy into an environment where there's a lot of tension or it's actually run smoothly. So I'm going to move over to the next one, and we're going to say, what can downgrade my investment? And I think you've really touched on that. But give us an overview on what will bring down your value in your gated community.
So again, it would be mismanagement of the scheme itself. So, mismanagement of the body corporate or HOA, that's a big one. Insufficient reserves. And I think this is very important when you purchase your property outside of a residential community. How much consideration do you need to put into, say, the road leading up to your property, or the area in which your property is positioned? Is the municipality going to service that property with water and power? So whereas in a residential community, often the ownership of these utilities is very important. People look for communities where there is a power and water solution in place, so that they don't get disconnected and they don't have water issues. So if you do live in a community or you're looking at something like that, and it is advisable to look at those types of environments because it does offer a long-term savings and then capital appreciation and a growth. But you have to make sure that there are what's called a reserve fund. And this reserve fund in a sectional title development is within the legislation of sectional title. And that is I think you said it's a 10-year reserve study to make sure that there's sufficient maintenance plan to make sure there's sufficient income. There isn't a legislative rule within a homeowners association that prescribes how much reserve should be in place, but a well-run development will have a reserve fund, and that reserve fund would be for things like roads, infrastructure, etc., and that not only to maintain it, but also to replace if need be. Then, as I mentioned, the brand of the developments is very important. Often once the developer has left the development or transitioned out of the development and the homeowners association has taken over, a lot of the power and the money that is spent promoting that particular development goes with the developer themselves, and it falls onto the shoulders of each and every homeowner to promote or to put budget aside or to look at how they're going to keep that development in a good standing within the media.
Yeah.
And then,
Louise, that brings me to, I will chip in before I forget, this actually brings me to a very valid kind of a point where we didn't include here, but one of them is that if you buy into a complex or a sectional title complex, go and check out how many tenants are there versus how many owners are there that are actually living in the complex. Because sometimes we find that developers can't sell the development, and they just to keep their cash flow going, they just dump in tenants there. And then you actually buy into an environment where this environment is, tenants quite often don't have the same kind of commitment towards keeping the property tidy and actually having a good communal space. So I would say always look at a good investment for yourself if you want to live there, is to actually find out the mix between tenants and owner-occupied people. Yeah. Then you also look at, does the developer maybe retain, does he own 90% or 80% of his complex, because he can then actually have a majority of voting in every decision that needs to make, and he can decide on levies needs to go up and up and up all the time to actually help him to bump up his and reduce his expenses. So those are, and then again that you can get from financial statements again by analyzing the information that's actually available to every home buyer before you actually commit yourself to buy.
Yeah, on that note, it's a very interesting conundrum whether the developer stays involved in a development or exits. Some of the most successful community developments in South Africa are successful because the developer has remained involved, and you can see that at spaces like the Waal of the world. Their development team has been involved in the development from the get-go and has quite a number of plans for that development looking into the future. So it's difficult to see. This is where the reputation of the developer. So if you're buying off plan for the first time, it's researching the reputation of the developer becomes essential. See how they have, managed previous developments, and if they're still involved, and if they aren't involved, what their exit strategy is, and have they sort of left, how they've left, and how are those developments now functioning. It is the reputation, especially for an off-plan purchase for the first time, is extremely important. And just a note, you mentioned tenants. I think there's another layer to tenants, and that's short-term rentals. Short-term rentals which are made, which though at the moment, probably with COVID, we're not really thinking about, but are made possible through digital platforms, especially if you're living by the coast. There can be a lot of, anxiety around short-term rentals, and can be a lot of frustration from the permanent residence perspective, as people are coming in and out of the development on a weekly basis over the weekend, and they're there just to party or whatever it is, and there's nothing wrong with that. But perhaps look at developments where short-term rentals are often kept to a certain section within the development, and there's a different section of the development which focuses on folks who plan to live full-time within that development. So have a look at those types of nuances. I mean, it is very, it is tricky to do this research, especially, but again, state living, we put a lot of content out there, Meyer, I know you do too, which is continuously helping people with these decisions.
Louise, but actually, while we're talking about that, some of my developers actually are investors, and they go and buy in estates, where they actually find that there's not a good management. They buy and then they turn it around.
Yeah. And that is absolutely possible. It's absolutely possible for you to definitely do that. I think that good management can really change, and it's not something that's not fixable, though if you're in the process it often feels like that. But welfare management, and there's a lot of very experienced legal folk that are playing in this space as well that can help management teams. And of course, at the absolute last point is an entire development can go under administration, and in that way, somebody at the ombudsman puts a team in charge, and a neutral third party then takes over the management of the development until such time as that development is back on track. So there are processes and procedures that you can follow if you find yourself in a difficult position as a homeowner, a tenant, an investor, and they can be resolved, absolutely.
So the same can apply obviously for bad management of your own property. If you don't look after your property, if you let your neighbors actually start running a shebeen or maybe a car dealership or repair shop next to your property. So always be careful and do your research and read up a lot before you buy. As you said earlier, buying a property is your biggest investment and do that with proper knowledge. So we're going to look at sectional title versus gated community, and we'll see at the Sectional Title Act, we have a management by the Sectional Title Act. We have a body corporate, that's your legal entity that actually constitutes all the owners in the sectional title scheme. Now, if we start unpacking the Sectional Title Act, we looked at also about 2-3 years ago, the Sectional Title Scheme and Management Act came in. This changed the way big time how body corporates are managed, actually regulating very strong with iron fist. It discussed rules, we've got conduct rules, we've got management rules. We're looking at the body corporates need to set up a budget. We see that in terms of the Sectional Title Scheme Management Act, we actually done away with the special levy concept because they brought in thinking ahead, and through that thinking ahead, we're looking at a 10-year maintenance budget. Now, I've been involved in sectional title schemes with a managing agent, just got somebody to do a quote for 10 years. They took that into an expense and said, okay, it's going to cost you 5 million rand over the next 10 years to maintain this property. Divide that by so many years, and there's your new levy. And I started looking at this levy and I said, hang on. If they bring this levy into place, our levies will double. And this is what everybody wants to avoid. You don't want to pay unnecessary levies. So I actually did some research and I went into the Sectional Title Scheme Management Act, and I saw that there are 3 ways of actually calculating this special levy. And I went back to my own managing agent and said, hang on, this is not the way that we can do this, because you have to actually look at how much money do you have in your reserve fund, how much money do you actually budget it for, and quite often you don't have to actually come forward with this severe maintenance plan. Yes, we still have to do that. It's almost like the red flags are out there, start budgeting, that we don't want to have special levies introduced that all of a sudden you're going to find 50,000 Rand to paint the building and you're going to split it between 2 or 3 owners, or sometimes much more expenses. We also see the introduction of a sectional title ombudsman that actually needs to accept any changes to the sectional title rules that are implemented. Now, Louise, you earlier mentioned that there's no such a sectional title act that regulates gated communities, and it's not regulated by an act. You often see companies being set up to do this management. Tell us a little bit more about that, please.
So within a security estate, you can have sectional title developments within the estate that would fall under the sectional title act. But a homeowners association, which is the governing body, if you can say that, or the rules set out to govern a homeowners association, it's generally either a constitution or a MOI. And it's governed sort of by the Companies Act, and which is slightly different. And although the first port of call when you live in a residential community is to look at what your rules. So if you have an infringement, what are the rules saying? So the management rules and the community behavioral rules. What are those rules saying? And then you can sort of look at the Companies Act and how those rules are managed, and the financial responsibility and how the financial processes are managed when it comes to auditing and who your auditors are and how frequently they change, etc. There's no prescription to say that you should have a maintenance budget not a maintenance budget, but a maintenance, what we would call capital reserves. But as I mentioned, all of a good, well-managed estate will have a capital reserve budget. It's not, in our opinion, it's not good practice to reduce levies. I think that you have to understand that what a levy is there for is to cover the costs to maintain the property. So that is the security officers, the landscaping, and a whole lot of other costs that go into the management fees, etc., goes into that levy. And those types of costs are always increasing. Every year it becomes slightly more expensive to have a security team, and the quality of the guard is increased, and as their grade goes up, there's additional costs, etc. The landscaping teams, and all of these teams play a very vital role in the maintenance of the development. So to now drop a levy, one has to question that. I think when it comes to costs and levies, it's important rather to look at what you can add to your estate that can free up expenditures for homeowners and residents, and they can then in that way assist them, rather than using money from maintenance budgets and capital reserves. And I know even now during COVID, it's been a question whether or not states can use their capital reserve budget to help homeowners in this time to manage the cost of their levies. And generally the thought on this is no, because we are going to still need to do those repairs and maintenance, and those costs are going to still come up. So what are the other solutions that we can offer our homeowners?
Particularly if you look at during the drought that Cape Town and the Western Cape had, if you buy into a complex with a huge garden areas and all that stuff, that would have consumed a lot of water and maintenance. So again, it's so important to understand what you're buying and where you're buying. Even if you buy a normal freestanding property and this property has got huge gardens, you know that you are into water the garden and you've got to replace the plants. So it's again gathering knowledge before you actually go into a purchase transaction, and not only look at the flyer that the estate agent gives you, which is normally a pretty picture of a place. They give you the rates and taxes, and there you make your biggest investment. We always say go and do a lot of research. Follow magazines and publishings like Estate Living that you actually become a specialist, and that's the only way that you can actually really go and invest properly and make sure that you don't actually buy in a development or a property that actually going to burn you and you are going to regret. So if you look at the sectional title scheme, we can see that in a sectional title scheme you own your section, quite often called a unit. But then again, because the entire property actually belongs to all the owners, you also own an undivided share in the common property. So every piece of open landscape, you've got one share in that, and that's determined according to your participation quota. That PQ, participation quota, is set out in the sectional title documents, the last page of your sectional title plan, and there you also own that. So for example, even your building burns down, you still own the land, and you own that according to your PQ, or the share in the entire development. So it's also an asset that you own, and that's why you also pay for rates and taxes, maintenance of the communal areas, and then you can be issued exclusive use areas. These are which you can also have a title deed on, and you can actually mortgage it as well. You cannot sell an exclusive use area to an outside person. You can only sell it to a person inside the complex that also owns a section. And as I quite often have found that developers actually start to develop in phases, they reserve for themselves the right in terms of Section 25 of the Sectional Title Act to extend the scheme. So maybe where you have a huge piece of land and they only build one block now, and then they start over the next 3 or 4 years, they actually start expanding on those blocks, and you find that you are now living almost a little bit on a construction site. When you bought there, you only saw this one block with beautiful gardens around it. But as the developer starts marketing, he starts selling more. So go and have a look at your deed of sale. The developer or the seller must always disclose to you that there was a Section 25 right to extend the scheme. And the interesting thing is that you can actually terminate your deed of sale if they failed to notify you on this right of extension. So again, Louise, we look at gated communities. We see that quite often, as you explained, you can have sectional title within the communal estate. But let's focus on the freehold ownership. Again, we see that there's no body corporate. So here we have a concept where the homeowners association actually owns the land. It's not part of your section or part of your unit. So it's actually that you have your plot or your earth, and then there's communal land that belongs to the homeowners association. Obviously, this can come in with extra a lot of features. Tell us a little bit more about those features, please.
So it's important to note the homeowners association is made up of all the homeowners. So if you own a plot within an estate, you are also a member of the homeowners association. And the homeowners association is there as with the managing agent, to manage the assets of the development and to manage all of the facilities, etc. Now, depending on the structure of that development, but the homeowners association could lease out their golf course, so they own their land, but they lease out the golf course to a golf professional to manage and run in a professional manner. Similarly, if they have a clubhouse, which is a restaurant, they could get a restaurateur to either lease out that space or have skin in the game to buy shares in that particular hotel, a particular restaurant. So they have the restaurateur has an invested interest in the success of that restaurant. It really just depends on the nature of the development, and also it depends on the funds, and maybe there's a white elephant within the development and they choose to sell it or they choose to buy new assets. And we saw that we referred to the Western Cape during the drought. Several estates made very large investments into some type of water solution for their community, and that then becomes part of the assets that they own and part of the estate, which though they can't ask for their piece of the pie when you sell your property, but that contributes to the overall value of the resale of your property and the capital appreciation of the property. So perhaps when you bought it, you know, especially the folks that bought in the early days, you bought off plan at, you know, in some cases 400,000 or 500,000 rand. And over the last 25 years, that development has grown, and there's beautiful new assets and pools and golf courses and glove houses, and it's developed into a fantastic development. And should that same property now be sold 20 years later, they would get millions for that property. So there has been an insignificant...
It enhances your value quite extensively if you also look into the long-term plan of this development, because it becomes a city one day standing on its own legs. Absolutely. And it's got all the amenities and the benefits of living in a closed community with most likely good security. I think it's paramount for many South Africans today, and all the conveniences there. I've been to one development in Boksburg where they've got a Kuro school right opposite the development, and inside they've got running areas, they've got gym facilities and all that stuff. So it really changes the way that you live, and as you said, a restaurant that you can actually frequent yourself without needing to drive to a restaurant, and all the security checks that goes with that as well.
Yeah, you're definitely transported back into the day where at, you know, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you can hear the parents shouting the names of their children, trying to collect them from neighbors' houses and from down the road where they're riding their bikes, etc. So there's definitely, it has a village feel and it has a community feel. But choosing the right community for your needs, that's what becomes important. And, you know, and like you said, it becomes a city. So, you know, if it's well positioned and it's close to, you know, where a lot of opportunities for work are, it's going to grow in value if it's well managed.
So you touched quickly on the rules and the regulations, because it seems like everything like just let's go there, but obviously we are restricted in certain cases. We discussed it briefly, but just touch on those points as well for us.
I think it goes down to, so each estate has two types of rules, the management rules and the behavioral rules of the development. A rule or a fair rule is really built to, you shouldn't actually have to think about it. I think rules are generally there, and most people who enjoy where they live and are considerate towards their neighbors don't really need a rule to tell them that they need to turn their music down at a certain time, or, you know, don't paint the front of their house bright pink when everyone else on the road is a brown, you know, like it's I think that a fair rule, and if it's managed well, and it's laid out correctly and it's not done in an aggressive fashion, is something that we would normally live by. But the fact is there is rules, and the rules are there to maintain the overall value of the properties for the collective. Rules in community living spaces are about the collective, not the I. And now I think that's always going to be a challenge, you know, throughout wherever you live, whether it's a sectional title or whatever type of community, even in a normal suburb. So the building regulations, the architectural guidelines, everything is to improve the overall value of the community as a whole, definitely.
Yeah, and you must take note of that before you invest there, but you're not frustrated by trying to add free space.
Yeah. You know, I think there's fair. You know, if you're moving into a community and you are bordering a retirement area, you choose to buy a plot, and next door to you on the other side of the fence is the retirement section of that community, and you've got 3 young boys. Now, obviously, the issue with the retirement community is going to be a reduction of noise and a management of noise. And if you've got 3 young boys, you know that it's almost impossible to manage boys. Yep. So, and girls actually. So perhaps buying a unit that isn't directly adjacent to the retirement community, but rather one that's a couple of streets away, would be a wiser a wiser decision. So knowing that there is a noise issue or noise restrictions around the retirement community and understanding that rule will help you position yourself better within that development, or if you choose not to live there at all. And alternatively, if you have an aging parent, and it would be wonderful to have your aging parent within the retirement community whilst you and your family live a couple of roads away, so that you're in walking distance, then you would position yourself closer to that retirement community.
All right, let's have a look at why would I buy in a community estate? Why would I buy directly from a developer? And why would I buy from a current owner, even in a community estate or outside? So I always ask the question, is this a new unit? And what are the costs associated with a new unit? Because interesting enough that the moment a unit is sold to a new owner, it changes a lot in respect of a cost of transfer and what will it cost me to buy that property. So I've looked at, and I call it the hidden costs, because I'm a property attorney. And often people come to my office and sign their transfer documents and say, hey, but why must I pay your legal costs? It's like not disclosed to me, and I feel like the bad one in the picture, and I say, but sorry, but you've got to pay my legal costs. And they said, but I didn't budget for it. And now I've got to try to help them to facilitate this transaction, but they don't have money to pay the upfront cost. So we've looked at the hidden costs, and we saw that if you buy from in a second-hand environment where the transfer was already done to a new owner, and that owner selling on the open market, you're going to pay for transfer costs and you can pay for bond costs. Now, if I look at the 800,000 Rand transaction, transfer cost is 21,500, and on the bond, if you take up a bond, you're going to end up 20,000 Rand. So you're looking at about close to 42,000 Rand that you need to expend. And I can recommend that any home buyer actually go and do their calculations. They can go to, there's a free tool, the Avid Firefly transfer cost calculator, and it's an amazing tool. I use it every day. I even downloaded this onto a mobile phone, but I can actually, when I start doing calculations, because I don't only do the transfer and the bond costs, I also start playing around with the monthly installments. I look at that, if I pay a little bit more extra into my home loan, how much will I save on my transfer, my bond cost? Because I start looking around, because this is one of the expenses of keeping a lot of people away from owning a property. And a lot of them are then restricted, as one can say, to buy from a property developer because they didn't save up to pay for the transfer cost. If I buy from a property developer, normally the property developer would have included transfer costs, and they would have included VAT or transfer duty. Now, if you buy from a developer, usually it's VAT that's included 15% in your purchase price. So quite often they also include the bond registration costs. If I buy from a private seller, it will be that you have to pay the transfer cost, you have to pay the transfer duties and the bond registration fees. So this, again, go and check out in your sale agreement before you sign what extra cost do you have to pay, because you can maybe apply to the bank for a 100% home loan. So look at this, if you get a 100% home loan from a bank that will fund your transaction, you don't have anything to pay in, a shortfall to pay in. In a private seller, you're going to have to pay that 41, almost 42,000 Rand in addition. Louise, when you deal with property developments, do you find that they normally have their costs included, or do you have to pay over and above it?
Well, if it's a first-time purchase, so off-plan purchase, then generally they include a lot of the costs. You still have to pay your transfer fees, etc. What sometimes is included is the VAT on the transfer fees, but they basically wrap it up for you. So they package the product so that there are, and they package the product and then they offer you various ways in which you can pay for it. So so that it's a simple transaction and you understand what it is that you're buying and what you're paying for.
You can buy quite often with all costs included, but again, going to a deed of sale to make sure, and this is where I find the government subsidies called FLISP. It stands for Finance Linked Individual Subsidy Program. A lot of people come to me and say, tell me about FLIP. And I said, no, I don't know about FLIP, but it's FLISP. So a finance links means that you have to get your home loan approved before you can apply. And then we see that this subsidy is an amazing subsidy because it is any home buyer, the collective income must not be more than 22,000 Rand. Because it's finance linked, you must have your home loan approved before you apply for the subsidy. You must also have a dependent, a spouse or a child, and you must be a South African citizen. Now this subsidy works on a sliding scale, and the more that you earn, the lower your subsidy is. But we find that the subsidy, although it starts at 3,501, there's very little home loan that you can apply and qualify for on 3,500. So we find that the best buying power is actually when you get into around about 10,000 to 12,000. At 15,000 we can see the price range now. So we've developed a very simplistic platform where you can go onto. On the left hand side, if your bond is already approved, and the right hand side, if you haven't actually got a bond yet, click on that and you will be guided through an online journey. Now look at this as we discussed the concept of having a deposit. Now FLISP can actually give you this deposit. Before, about 18 months ago, July, it's actually almost 2 years ago, the subsidy was only on 10,000 Rand, you can only get 49. Now it's 88, double the amount. 15,000 was 20, now you can get 62,000 Rand. Now, on a home loan of 600,000 Rand, and you get approved and you get 62,000 Rand, you can pay that back into your home loan. Immediately it changes the ball game big time. The reason for that is that when you can put down a deposit, the bank loves you. And the bank says that you also have some skin in the game. I don't have to give you a 100% home loan, and because your risk to me as a bank is lower, I can give you a better home loan interest rate. I've done some calculations and I saw that if the bank charges you 2% over prime, that 2% will cost you 52% more for your home loan payable over 20 years. So my recommendation is try to use the best service and tools and assistance that you can get. And if you're a first-time buyer and you earn less than 22, up to 22, go and make use of a government subsidy called FLISP. So we've actually, in our calculator, we've actually made it very simple. You can have a drop-down menu and you can select your income, and it will give you a subsidy calculator. And look at this magic. If you buy from a property developer and you get a 100% home loan, you can actually then pay that subsidy into your home loan, and obviously it's a lot less expensive per month to pay a bond of 772 compared to 800. But now again, look at this. If you have to pay transfer cost and you're buying from a development where they don't include the cost in your transaction, or you're buying on the second-hand market, you end up with a 41,900 subsidy shortfall. If you contribute your subsidy into that, you only have a shortfall of 14,000 Rand. That's much better. Just be careful that in the Gauteng, or let's rephrase it, only in the Western Cape, you can actually, on a second-hand transaction, use your deposit, your subsidy as a deposit, and also use it as to cover your transfer cost. Louise, this is really for me a big change in the industry. This will help our buyers big time.
Absolutely, it enables somebody who maybe previously wasn't able to purchase. And again, like we mentioned at the beginning of this discussion, there's a lot of new units available within the market, and developers are beginning to see the value of providing community lifestyle at a more kind of at about a 600,000 Rand mark. So this product assists those buyers tremendously.
Well, I applied it actually myself for I sold a property that I owned for a few years, and within the first weekend we had a buyer. Now it's a young couple that bought, they were so excited, and they got a home loan approved, and we were also excited that they were the first buyers and the property deal is done. Then a couple of days later they came back and said, oops, bad news. And I said, what's the bad news? They said, the bank approved the bond, but they needed 43,000 rand subsidy. I said, well, to the bond consultant, and I said to the estate agent, and I said to the bank, did you actually look at the income of how much do they can qualify for a subsidy? And it actually came out that they were earning 19,000 rand, which gave them the home loan they wanted, but the FLISP subsidy exactly matched their shortfall. So today they are living in their house. I'm a happy seller because I sold my property to the first buyer. The agent got their commission, but they didn't even think of applying a subsidy in this instance until I had to actually wake them up and say, please go and assist the people with their subsidy. And that enabled them to buy property. So again, if we know about things, then we can actually go and explore this.
Yeah,
absolutely. We recently expanded our relationship to work with housing investment partners as well, because they actually came around and said, let's help you on a different way to own your property. They are looking at a completely new structure of assisting home buyers, and any home buyer that earns up to 30,000 rand or combined income up to 60,000 rand, they will look at a completely different way to restructure or structure your home loan repayment, because they look at a certain amount of your income, and then they increase it as your salary increases, so that you start at a low payment and then you actually have a step up next year. And they increased recently the 650,000 rand home loan offering that goes up to 950. So we're very excited that Housing Investment Partners has now opened up the game big time. So you can still even also apply for a government subsidy FLISP, combine it with a HIP home loan, or you can combine it with a bank home loan, and that gives you the ability to actually finance your property transaction. Now, Louise, we've discussed it lots of times now, over and over. We see that the market has gone down during COVID. We see that the perception is that people can't buy, but we've seen a drop in interest rate. I've never seen in the last 30 years that I've been involved in property, interest rates being so low. So the question is, must I buy now or must I wait for another 2 years? What are your views on 2020, a buyer or a seller's market?
Well, there's a terrible but very appropriate expression when there's blood on the streets. So it's definitely a buyer's market. There's different types of sellers out there at the moment, and there's those sellers who have got themselves into financial difficulty due to COVID. They've lost their jobs or whatever it might, and they're trying to offload their properties as quickly as possible. So there you have, negotiation. I think that the government is within an accessible property market where properties are, sitting at the 600,000, 700,000 rand mark. I think that lots of property developers are now playing in that space, whereas there were in the years before there were fewer. And I think that the developers themselves are answering a market, because remember, developers react to what the market's asking for. I think the most important thing about whether you're buying your property inside a sectional title development that's a resale, or whether you're buying a freestanding property outside of a development, your power lies within your ability to negotiate. An individual that is selling their property are going to ask for as much as possible, because that property to them has been a primary residence. It has a lot of emotion. It's where their kids grew up, etc., etc. So they're going to ask for their best possible price, and you as a buyer, you want to buy for the least possible price. So you should never be fearful to negotiate. But at the same time, be mindful of your estate agent, who might, especially if you fall in love with the property, might say, it's an extra, put an extra 200,000 down, put an extra 100,000 down, and the property is yours. Just be mindful, negotiate, and have a budget in mind, and draw the line. Don't, I found my first property, it ended up being a great investment for me, but I was very strict on what I was prepared to spend. And if you overspend, it becomes a constant stress and struggle for you to meet the terms of that payment plan or that loan repayment, plus the levies, plus this, plus that, a school, and there are lots of costs nowadays that one cannot predict. So be mindful about the pressures around you and negotiate the hell out of it. You want to get the best possible price to buy if you're going to buy.
I spoke to an investor 3 weeks ago, and he tells me that he bought a property 7 years ago, and he's still not even breaking even by renting it out and collecting rent, paying his levies, paying his bonds. So very careful when you do investment. So this is where I want to share a secret tip with you today. And actually, how can I secure a property in 2020 for 800,000 Rand or R1 million or 1.2 and only pay 8,000 Rand to more in 2022. So we're looking at that rentals are going to increase. We are looking at prices of properties are definitely going to increase in the next 2 or 3 years. Now, people will, if you read today in the newspapers and social media and media, they tell us that, wow, properties have dropped 5% or 15% in value. I'm not worried about that because properties will go and increase again. If you look at a lot of companies, and I'm not going to name them, a lot of these companies' share values have dropped with 70%, 80% in the last 6 months. I was actually astounded when I read on Property 24, Media 24 recently, they did a survey of huge companies and how the share prices dropped. And a lot of investors, they say, I don't mind so much with my share portfolio because they will recover again. Now the same applies for properties. We've got to look at the equity in our property. The equity is always how much do I own on my property and how much is the value of my property. Luckily, like a house, is that the moment that you bought your house, it's not like a car where you drive your car out of a dealership, it drops in value. If you take it back 1 day later, the dealer is going to offer you less money for your property. Most likely, if you buy a property, your property will improve in value, and 6 months in the year later, the property will have increased in value. Hopefully your home loan has gone down, particularly in the first 2 or 3 or 4 years. You don't pay a lot of capital down payment on your property, but after a few years, particularly if you start paying more money on your home loan, you start seeing that there's a difference between your outstanding home loan because it starts going down. And then you can look at the graph, at how the graph starts going down and how upside your property goes by starting to grow. So we say that, how can I actually achieve this? By buying property now, freeze the price, because I'm not ready to buy it completely. I'm very almost like getting engaged with my property. I don't want to marry it yet at this stage because I don't know what's going to happen. We say we've got the solution for you because we can still actually move in your property. You have I don't say you're going to have the same being engaged, not the same benefits of being married to a person, but you can actually look and say, I want to own my own property, I want to get my foot in the door. So this comes down to the rent to buy finance concept. I've been running rent to buy since 2007, and we assisted a lot of people, but through this we started home ownership education. And through home ownership education we started assisting people with their debt and budget and affordability repair. In 2008, a fund manager came to me and offered us their finance that they have. Now we have money available in the price range 400 to 1.8. Gauteng, Bloemfontein and Cape Town. Again, we have so many people coming to us. I think we've got about 12,500 people that signed up in the last 2 years with us. We're all looking for alternative finance to buy their properties. But unfortunately, a lot we have to first help them with some panel beating. One of my colleagues say that we have to fix the flat tire. Now he uses this quite nice because what he tells me is that if you have a flat tire in your home ownership journey, you don't abandon your car next to the road. You actually wait there for somebody to help you. You phone somebody, maybe the AA or a repair service, maybe your insurance can cover that, and they come out and they help you to fix the tire. And this is exactly what we're doing with rent to buy. Well, one benefit is that the fund can buy the property right now. It can actually move into the property and you rent it for 2 years. And during that time, particularly when you buy from a property developer, we can freeze the price and only add 8,000 Rand more. Now people ask me, where does the 8,000 Rand come from? The 8,000 Rand is a valuation of a property. When the fund buys a property, we send out a top valuer to make sure that the property is valued at the right price. Because again, we don't want the rent to buy customer to buy the property and then 2 years later they say to me, Meyer, but this was overpriced 2 years ago. I'm not actually happy. Although you wanted to buy it yourself, but we bring in that extra protection. So that's why we can buy the property, freeze the price for you for 2 years, and 2 years later you actually buy the property back. And the amazing thing is that transfer duty, all that is already included in the price because of the structure of a rent to buy system. So how it works is that the seller in a normal sale sells the property. Now that seller can be a property developer, it can be anybody in the outside market as well that's selling a property on Property 24, private property. It can be Gumtree as well, it can be through any estate agent. The finance company buys the property and then the agent still gets rewarded commission, and then we enter into a 24-month lease agreement. Louise, do you see this maybe a possible benefit for any home buyer going into this direction?
Absolutely. I think I always think it's worth exploring alternative funding mechanisms. I think the financial institutes aren't the only funding mechanisms, and it's worth investigating, different ones. This gives you the opportunity to find a property that's suitable for you. I suppose my question to you would be more that this 24-month lease agreement, with the leasing agreement amount that you're paying, would that be in line with what you would have paid as a bond repayment? Your sound, Meyer.
The question is that, is your rental in line with the bond repayment? No, it's more expensive. And the reason for that is that the rent to buy fund makes their money on the money that they lend out, and therefore they want a reasonable return on the investment. There's no extra profit being made from a property price. That's why we are able to freeze the price for you for 2 years. So yes, your interest rate that you pay is higher than the interest rate that you'll pay to the bank. But quite often the bank comes in and asks you for a 10 or a 15% deposit. If you buy from a property developer, your deposit is only equal to 2 months rental plus the 8,000 Rand. So there are benefits and there are negatives. What do we say? Let's first go for a home loan. If a bank doesn't approve your home loan, let's look at plan B. We have so many people coming to us for plan B that we first say to them quite often, did you consider applying to the government for a FLISP subsidy? And they said, I didn't even know about that. So what we're trying to do is to be almost like the hippo of insurance in property finance. We say, let's be creative. Let's look at all the other opportunities. We go to a bank, we go to housing investment partners, we go to rent to buy finance, and there's also what a lot of people don't know about is that you can also do pension back lending, where you can actually borrow money against the security of your pension. So let's not look at only one way of providing finance to your property deal, because again, as we said earlier, look at securing your property right now and don't wait until 2022, 2023, when the prices have escalated so big that you are trying to catch up and you are going to stay a tenant for a long time and make your landlord rich and actually pay this. So the question that came up, what happens after my 2-year rental? And we say we actually fast track it a little bit, because in month 22, 2 months before your term expires, we'll sit around the table and we will say to your personal trainer that helped you to stay fit and just guided you through this process. Now we have 3 options for you. The one is that you can switch your rental agreement into an installment sale. This is governed by the Alienation of Land Act. And here the terms and conditions will apply. Sorry, that 1968 is not 68, it must be 81, I see now. And then you can actually pay off this home loan over a period of 15 years. So you don't even need to go to a bank. The second one is you can apply for a home loan and take transfer. Here's where you have now the time to shine. You can go back to your bank and say, remember 2 years ago, you didn't want me as a customer. I'm back now, I'm stronger, I'm healthier, and I'm in a better position because I bought a property 2 years ago that's grown in value now. It's now escalated 4.5%, 5% per year, so it's now worth 10% more. Plus my salary improved. My credit rating is much stronger. I have even a deposit available. Please, I'm ready now to do business. The other third one is that you can actually also sell the property and take the profit. You must just take transfer of the property first, and the simultaneous transfer you can pass transfer on. So these are the 3 opportunities that we worked out that can be beneficial to a home buyer, and we can assist them to get your foot in the door, freeze the price for you for 2 years, and then 2 years later you can actually apply any of these 3 conditions. Any questions on that, Louise? What are your comments on this?
I just wanted to ask you, do you think that at the moment the scheme looks up to 1.8 million rand? Do you see that this type of financing model breaking that 1.8 million rand ceiling and playing in a slightly widening, so you can apply for it if you're buying a 2.2 million rand property or a 2.5 million rand property?
We decided when we started with a rent-to-buy pilot project to work in the affordable space to help people to get their foot in the door, because of the one reason that if you do 5 transactions of 2.5, you eat up a lot of money from the fund. You can do a lot more transactions on a smaller scale and help a lot more people. Interesting thing is now that I'm talking to one bank and I've asked them to look at this business module and see if they can't open up the areas and the prices, and or maybe even just work in a space of 600 to 1.2, because this is really where the need in South Africa lies for home ownership. And a lot of people have been pitching the 3 million, 4 million, 5 million. However, I've done many transactions in the rent to buy, what we call standard space now, where we don't have a fund, but the seller sells to the buyer, and we do an agreement which is similar to what you see on the screen now, an installment sale and or a rent to buy combined. And there we actually just do the deal between the seller and the buyer. The biggest deal I've done on this scale was 22 million rand. Recently did a 4 million rand, busy now with a 3.2 million rand. And the smallest one I've done was the 150,000 rand property in Kailicha. So what we say is that if you know about alternatives, you can apply these alternatives and you can sell a property from a developer that's already constructed with a unit, and you can find a person that buys it on an installment sale, on a rent to buy finance, or a home loan combined with FLISP. There are so many permutations that you can actually apply as long as you just know about them. So the question is always, where do I find these properties? Now obviously you are already working with a lot of property developers. Tell us a little bit about the scope. You've got, obviously you're working on the high-end market, but you're also going to move over now, if not move over, but expand as well to the market where we say, let's start looking at other estates, because this is really where we find there's going to be explosion in the market in the affordable space. People earn up to 30,000 rand a month that actually can buy into these estates.
So there's absolutely. So there's our approach to we want to work with as many communities as possible. We'd like to work with everybody. I think that there's our application, our app, Community Connect. will enable you to view the estates and the developments and what they offer and read up around information around these different products like we've discussed today. At the moment, the open developments have multiple price points, and that's because the market drives what developers build. So in the past, security developments were 10 or 15 years ago, they were very, very niche, and the buy-in on those particular developments were quite high. Developers now see that a certain part of their development could be for maybe for rental basis only. A second part is for like a FLISP buying ownership model. There's a buy-to-rent ownership, rent-to-buy ownership model, and then of course there's your, your more standardized, purchases where you're buying, at a 2, 3, 4 million rand mark. So these developments so it's important to have a look and decide, okay, where do I want to live, and where am I working, and where are my kids? And then from there, say, what are the developments in my area that would be suitable at the different price ranges? Often, depending on the size of your family and your requirements that you need, you can find that there are lower or more entry-level properties within a larger scale development, which you might have thought, oh, well, I would never find something affordable in there. So don't put them, don't cross them out just yet. Just double check to make sure that there isn't anything available within your price range within development that you like. But second to that, us as Estate Living are adding more developments to our portal on a daily basis, and included in that is a note whether that particular property has these models available within that purchasing. So you can easily go through the different properties, view and see where they are. And as you know, this concept has been, Meyer, you've developed this amazing product. And I'm sure that, like any new business venture, it takes time to develop. And now we see lots of developers, wanting to work with you and seeing the opportunities. So as that speeds up, so will the number of developments that come on board. And I know that there are several, and there are more coming. So that's very, very exciting.
No, it's really exciting, because developers are realizing they've got the demand is really in affordable housing, and people get access to easier finance through FLISP, through HIP, through home loans that are they're bending backwards. The banks are bending backwards to lend people money if their credit score and if their affordability meets the criteria. So it's really, I've dealt with one particular developer where they've created a particular brand going with a bank where what they call the green bond, and I see that they actually offer a reduced interest rate if you go through this process. But again, you will only qualify for this if you have a strong credit score, if you have a strong affordability, and if you can put down a deposit. It actually helps you to enhance your negotiation again. So again, we urge home buyers to actually start getting themselves ready and preparing them for this home buying journey long before they actually just decide one Saturday morning, I want to own my own house. I'm tired of paying rent, making my landlord rich. I want to buy a property. We don't want you to go and actually just sign a dotted line that Saturday 12 o'clock. We first want you to educate yourself, to learn what it is, what are the responsibilities of owning a house, and then looking at all the support and finance solutions that you can have, because you can save thousands of rands going into that home ownership. So you've actually launched also a app that you can actually help to educate people now. Tell me a little bit more about that tool and assistance that you've got.
So on the application, as you can see, Connected Living, here you'll be able to search for both news, information, educate yourself around the different rules and regulations, and then view the individual developments that have these various products available to you. I know you said don't go on Saturday morning and decide you want to buy a house. It is challenging and can be not always the nicest process trying to find a property. I'm a single mother, and so I have a single income, and going out shopping for property where you come across folks that have got two incomes and you're competing for the same property, it can be quite stressful, especially when you trying to find the best possible thing for your family. So what's nice about our application is we are consistently sending out new developments so that you can understand what's out there now and at the moment. And we're also sharing these different finance models and assisting people with getting yourself right when it comes to getting best practice when it comes to purchasing. But we also share a lot of information about how to manage your property once you purchase it. Like buying a big property costs a lot of money to manage. And and we share little things around that as well, how to combat problems with property ownership. So it's not just restricted to actual buying of a unit, but it gives you a nice holistic approach to property ownership.
But I believe soon you'll also assist your buyers in helping them to check out what type of home loan they can get.
Absolutely.
Combined with and all that stuff. So that's quite a useful service, because
Absolutely.
that is a all and end all. How much do I qualify for? Can I qualify?
Oh, that's the thing. Absolutely. It's easy to get lost in the journey of looking at lovely properties, but the harsh reality is, what do I qualify for? So we are obviously working with yourself, and we're integrated a process which will enable you to go through a bit of a financial process and assist you with finding out exactly what you can qualify for, and then you go and view the properties that are within that price range, that affordability price range, or come up with a new type.
Quite useful to do that all from your app, integrated in the same journey. So while you're browsing around, you want to check, can I actually afford this? And then next one is, can I actually also get a government subsidy? You can now think of all the power you will have in your hand through this app to be able to do that one shot, so you don't have to go to different phone the bank first and do it all on your app, and hopefully by 11 o'clock in the morning if you actually have enough money to buy.
You know what you need to do to make sure you can. And I think going into viewing properties and going in with a clear understanding of your affordability does give you a more secure, it does increase your opportunity to secure that property. You can play a little bit hardball there, because you know what you can afford, and you've got the negotiation, and you've got the pre-approval, if you want to say it like that. So they have more power in that negotiation.
If you're a home buyer or a property buyer and you walk around, let's say you've got the cash in your hand, it's got a lot more negotiation power than a person say, I must still go and check if I can qualify for a home loan. If you are a home loan buyer with a pre-qualification certificate, I feel that you're very close to a cash buyer, because you say to the bank, I've done my homework. I know exactly what I can qualify for. I even have a FLISP certificate that I've got 50,000 Rand in my FLISP wallet. I've got 500 or 800,000 Rand in my home loan wallet. This is my buying power. Let's do business. Yeah. So we're quite excited about that feature that will be on your app store and be able to integrate it. So we've also looked at a lot of other developments that we are bringing to the table, and it's so exciting to look at all this that will come to the forward. We've already discussed going to the CMA and the property growth. We looked at that if you want to do an analysis on your property, that you can actually go and do your research on the luxury of your laptop or your phone. You can actually go into Property 24. There are many these other sites as well. But I researched and I went into Property 24 and I saw that you can go and down focus into Cape Town or the Strand or Somerset West. Then you can actually go and say, I want to look what is the average price in Cape Town. Now the same one can do for an estate. You can say that I want to go into the Zals, or we can go into which of your estates are you listing that you can go on. We saw them earlier, so give me one or two of your estates.
Anyone. Okay, so we could go Arabella, for example.
So I'm not going to do that live now, but we're going to go into any of those estates, and then you can start comparing what was the suburb report, what was the owner's complex, and what are the sectional title schemes on that. How many transfers happened in the past? So this is an example from Lightstone. So we saw the previous slide was probably 24. So there are so much information available to home buyers, and if we can direct them working with yourselves so that people become educated, become informed, then they start comparing apples with apples. Then we direct them to assisting them to do these analysis, and this is all part of a platform that's been created now, assisting a home buyer and then saying to the home buyer, okay, I'm not leaving you now outside. I find it so often where people take a person to a website and say, okay, there's a selection of stuff that you can decide on. It's almost like arriving at a restaurant. They've got chicken, they've got beef, they've got fish, they've got pizza. What do you kind of really want to do? I know that you like pizza, so let me take you to the pizza and I'm going to compare with you what you like to consume and use today. And this is what we're doing with education, and assisting people by learning them, educating them from an early stage. How do they prepare themselves for this journey and make sure that you can do the best type of research before you actually going to buy a property. So again, Louise, we've discussed it. What do I want now and where will my property grow the best? So if we start looking at how you can save thousands of your rands, one of the calculations we've done is actually to pay extra into your home loan. Now, particularly, Louise, what do you think is that the interest rates has dropped? Do you think it's a wise thing to actually accept the lower interest rates? Or do you think it's better to actually continue with your own old home loan because you're used to that old home loan?
Yeah, I definitely think that the more swiftly you can pay off your home loan, the less interest you will pay on your home loan. So you know, if you can continue to pay at the initial rate that you've originally signed your home loan at, so whatever that might be, 1,000 Rand, 5,000 Rand, if you can maintain that during the drop in interest rate, you will accelerate your speed of repaying your home loan, and therefore, by definition, less interest, because most of it is interest.
Let's look at this slide we've got in front of us. There we see, I worked it on an 8.75 because not everybody is so lucky to get prime interest rate. Now, if you pay this off over a period of 20 years, look at the bottom, total amount paid 1.69. It's almost 1.7 million that the 800,000 Rand bond cost you. Now, a lot of people, when they come to me and sign their bond documents, they go through that quote of a bank and they see, goodness gracious, is this the amount I'm going to pay back the bank, and they want to run away. But then I say to them, just now let's sit back and let's do some clever calculations. If we apply for FLISP and we have a 35,000 Rand FLISP subsidy, don't take that money and you can't spend it because it's paid back into your bond. But keep on paying your same home loan installment that you would have paid. Because over 20 years, if you look at the green arrow, it will cost you 1.696 million Rand. But if you take that and continue with your old bond repayment, you can actually down pay your bond 2 years and 1 month earlier. And that means that 35,000 Rand can save you 147,000 Rand. Number one, you've got a buffer already into your home loan as a deposit. Number two, by just keeping on a simple same installment payment, you are paying back your bond much faster. For me, that is one of the best savings that you can ever have. Louise, this is really almost like rocket science, but it's almost so simplified. in actually helping home buyers to actually get faster on the tracks to pay off their bond. What are your views on that?
Absolutely, yeah. I would agree with you. If you can both add in your deposit, your FLISP, access to FLISP, and then accelerate the repayments of your home loan, it will, as the numbers speak for themselves. It will give you a return. And I think that's for any person that buys property, regardless of the range that they're buying in. They all try to add a little bit of extra into that bond, And I mean, a question here is, if you're applying for an 800,000 Rand bond and you're using all these subsidies, should you make that an access bond so you can accelerate your payments, but should something go wrong, you could access that money? What do you think of that?
Well, you can't draw the 35,000 Rand FLISP subsidy because that is frozen in your bond. But if you do pay extra money, yes, make it an access bond that you can draw on that. A lot of people are finding it a better interest rate saving by putting money into your home loan with an access bond, and rather have that as a savings account, because currently at the interest rate of prime, which is 7.25, that is the type of interest that you will save on your home loan. If you go and open a savings account, your interest rate is most likely going to be 3.5. So definitely your home loan is one of the best tools you can use if you have an access facility to pay that money in. So definitely look at this. Now, Louise, will this type of information be one of the features that you're going to feature on your
Absolutely.
app? Yeah. So one must read up on this like on a daily basis, one can say.
Yes, so we will have this. We'll actually share this webinar across all our content streams. We will also, use this conversation and break it up into parts so that people can just access the information that they're looking around a particular product or service. And these types of products are being grown all the time. There are always new opportunities, and working with partners enables us to bring these opportunities to the foreground. To the forefront. Sorry.
We're excited to be able to follow your app and read the news and learn more about that. So that brings us to the end of today's discussion. I'm not going to spend too much time on sharing the screen because you're obviously going to circulate this information to everybody that they can sign up and start looking into rent to buy, FLISP, bond fitness, and everything there. So that is basically the session that happened already, the roadworthy certificate. We are going to skip over that. And then these are the useful contact details where we can get in touch with everybody. But you're going to, as you said, break this up into smaller sections, more quick to listen and to actually learn about, if you want to know more about rent to buy and FLISP. So give us a last thought on what you're going to do and how you're going to educate us all and assist us going forward.
So estate living has always been a tool which people can use, and a hub of information so that you can find out anything you need to know about community living. So we will continue to do that. You can access us through all our channels. So we are on social media channels, online, our website, our app. We will share this information, share this content, and continue to build it, because as you showed us, you have several new developments that are coming in the market, and we will then take those new developments and showcase them across all our platforms so that folks can read up about them and get an understanding of what opportunities lie within those developments. Do your research, and understand what you can afford, and that is fair. We all start somewhere. So, and that's what I think makes the rent to buy property market so interesting, is that you can freeze that cost, which means you can start now and and you don't have to wait, because in 2 years' time the property landscape will look very different to what it looks today. And today there are opportunities for buyers. In 2 years' time that market could have turned around completely and it would become a seller's market, and the opportunities there within are reduced, the costs go up. So, now is a very good time. If you have the affordability and the desire, it's a good time to get in on the market.
Louise, thanks a lot. It's been a pleasure sharing and learning from you, and I look forward to your app, and I look forward to further collaboration. Thanks a lot for participating and being part of this today. Really, it was a pleasure to learn from you, and excited, and let's continue these discussions and have some more of this. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, and thanks for everyone for tuning in.